Hello everyone, it's your host MX2, and in this video I'll be going over the geometry node setup that I use to create this system for basically flipping the top faces of this cube over time. I have it mixed with a noise texture so that way it's a little bit more random, but it's also flipping these in order of its ID. So that is what we'll be talking about in today's video, but I just wanted to show the effect. In fact, if we jump over to render, we also see that I did a little bit of texturing where I brought in a movie sequence and just mapped it to do the rendering. And now that it's over in the rendering, we can see it playing a little bit of a insolve ad while flipping up. And we also have the compositor adding bloom to the viewport because the EV bloom is no longer here, so we'll have to someday have a system for dealing with bloom to the compositor and adding it as a simple setting that you can toggle off and on. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and begin. Hello everyone, and good morning. I'm your host MX2, and in this video we'll be flipping open the top sequentially. So we'll just jump right over to geometry nodes, and for this we already have a auto smooth. We'll just go ahead and remove that modifier, and we'll just click on new to add a new geometry node setup. So from here, I'm just going to scale it out, and the first thing we want to do is just kind of section off and split the top away. So I'm just going to shift right click to just create a little timeline deviation, and we'll just come out and do separate geometry. I like separate because it shows me what I didn't get in addition to what I did get. So right now we see that we're separating nothing, and what I want to do is separate it by the normals. I've also been experimenting with the dot product, but in this case we're just going to use a separate XYZ and plug it up on the Z. The good thing about this is that because of the way that we captured it now, no matter where I place it in space, it'll separate just that one face, versus if I use position, it would only work here. Over the course of attempting to get better with nodes, I noticed that there was a bit of content that did not exist in the hard surface realm when it came to geometry nodes. So I think that's something I would like to try to work towards. So what we're going to do is duplicate this node, and we'll just add that next, and we'll make this one an edge. For this one, what we want to do is use the index in order to get just one edge, but for that we'll need to compare, and we'll use compare equal and replace our result, and we just want to offset this till we get the one in the back. There's only 4 edges, so we isolate it down to a face, and then we isolate it down to an edge, and that is so that I can have my pivot that I always want to have. So let's go ahead and set up an attribute statistic, and this one basically allows us to capture a moment in time and use it later, or at least to my understanding. So we're just going to take the position, and we'll be using that later, so I will just collapse that. So basically we have our face giving us an edge, and we're able to keep going. Before this, we also probably want to do a little more inline adjusting, so I'll just move this out, and we'll bring in a subdivide. Actually, we are splitting it off here. This is where we want to do it, my mistake. So we have our face, and what do we want to do with this face? I'm going to subdivide, and I'm talking to you, but I'm actually talking to myself, and that's a lot of what nodes has been for me, is me just talking to myself and asking myself questions that I don't get the answers for. So we'll also use we don't need to split edges because we separated the geometry. I don't know what I was thinking there, but we do need it afterwards, so we'll go ahead and put that back. And the more I mess with nodes, the more I realize that we need some sort of quick nodes options along the top for us to drag down what is next. I mean, if you're holding something with a vector, then obviously the next thing you would want to drag out as a node would probably be the vector math. Going back to thoughts I had years ago. We'll also take this moment to scale just to make sure. even though we are going to do something a little more to this. So now that we have this, we just want to make sure we're handling it in the right order. So we're scaling down our faces, and now what we want to do is offer it individual faces one by one. So let's duplicate this over, and we'll put this on face, and we'll just choose selection. And we see that now we're able to cycle between all the pieces that we have divided and manage them independently. And this part is the easy part for me, at least mentally. But as I said previously, I really struggle very hard to think in terms of nodes, to even think as a procedural modeler. And that has piqued my curiosity because, you know, Blender gets more and more complex, but the learning of it also becomes a little bit harder too, as the documentation becomes more and more sparse. So I want to help that, because I do see the potential in nodes, and I do want to begin taking advantage of them in workflow, so that way I can have more interesting, more procedural models able to be done, but that requires math. Icky. So we are just rotating to just see kind of where we're getting our edges, and we could make this happen exactly as we want it. You know, we see that some of these edges aren't even facing the way that we need them to, but let us continue and we'll come back to that. So now we are separating out our faces and then sending it through here where it's able to be cycled through. This is where now we want to try to set the position. And setting the position was something that took me a while to wrap my head around as well, especially the part where to rotate, you have to connect a vector rotate to the actual position itself, and then connect a position to the vector. And then for some reason it just made sense to connect the edge center into the center. And we just want to grab the right face, not the wrong face. And I can already tell you that that is wrong. Rotating on the Z, we want to rotate probably on the X. And we'll drag this out 2 radians. I kind of wish that 2 radians was just part of this and I didn't have to do that part as a result of this part. So what we'll do is we'll set this to 90. And we want to actually open up -90. So as it opens, that happens. So now we've set up basically the simplest part of what I would call a machine, the little machine. You know, we come in, we separate our geometry, we get just our face. In the end, we want to put it back together, right? So over here, let's join, and let's right here we have the inverse of our separated geometry, which results in that. However, if we have one face, we should have that. So let's double check that one more time. Okay, actually no, that was right. Sorry. We actually did have the right result here. I'm telling you, I keep letting nodes outsmart me. And I know that it comes down to me needing to be more organized, to use more groups, but if I start using more groups, then we'd have to be going to groups to start doing repairs on these. But I want to do something about every node, at least in terms of like its hard surface application, because that's what I've been kind of exploring, is just hard surface applications of using geometry nodes. You know, first with seemingly simple stuff. So we have one flap able to open, and so now all we need is the invert of this, and now we have everything happening, and we can see that this is our result, even though this is very basic. So now how do we make this sequential? Well, previously I was trying to do it with a repeat node, but we want to actually do this with a for each because it will give us a better result. In fact, let's just redo how we assemble our group output. So we want to do for each face that is fed in here, which is right here. In fact, right here it begins. And we'll move this over because now it's splitting the edges, and then the first thing it does is it brings in the face, and then that face gets split, separated. Actually, we bring in the face. We no longer need to do this level of separation to it because it's already happening. It's a for each element, so it's for each face. We'll just bring that in, and now we are over here to the part where we're grabbing just our edge and then transferring it over here where we're now able to rotate it. So let's see if I was correct here. And I almost want to mess with these inputs, but I'm pretty sure I will mess up in the middle of a video. But let's rotate it. So now we see that they are rotating up. So what I want is to do this over the course of its indexes. And prior to this video, this was a level of understanding that I was struggling with. So we'll plug this attribute statistic here, and we just want the index for the faces. I don't know if this will actually work, but I don't see any reason why it shouldn't. We also need this to be a float because this will give us the sum number of all the faces. In our case, we have 16 faces. So if we split our edges and we look at our faces, let's double check, make sure it's not mean, which is 7.5, 120. And I'm just looking to see where I get that 120 from. Let's look at max. Max is 15. So we want max, but we also want max plus 1 because it, 0 counts. Just something that keeps driving me crazy as I mess with things in geometry nodes is just forgetting that, Super Mario Brothers 2 rules. We'll call this one that we just inserted we'll just call it max, just so I know. So before everything goes in, it gets split, but it also gets analyzed where we tell it, hey, this is the maximum number of faces that's going to be going through this, and maybe we can fit this into our math. No, what I want to do is use a map range. From max, and let's see how it's working. Not as smooth as I would like. In fact, once it gets to the end, it really raises fast. So what we want to do is have this happen to each face over time. Alright, so the easiest way to deal with this would be to plug the index back in. So we'll plug the index into the factor, and then we'll use a utilities math node. A little deep for math. Math is kind of important to be so deep. And now we can begin bringing this down by that. So let's plug the max, and if that's correct, everything should lay down. So what we should do at this point is just set it up to animate, which is one of my favorite things. In fact, geometry nodes makes that easier. Let's type in time, and we'll go with scene time. And I've become a big fan of taking this out and plugging it into cosine. Of course, we want to put a multiply before this. The multiply will allow us to choose how fast it goes up and down. And so sometimes you want it to be a real slow, gradual change. And from here, we'll call this map range. And I call this a time machine. It's just a way that I manipulate time to turn it into an animatable medium, so that I'm not sliding sliders over and over to look at things. So we want to bring this down. And it'd be crazy if you could zoom while you're holding a handle. We want to take from max, so 0. Actually, no, we want to do it from here. And also, we want to do the from min of -1, because once this thing starts, it'll go from -1 to +1. And I'll plug it in just so you can see the result. And now we have it raising each of them up. And because of subdivision being used, one of them didn't make it. Let's try that again. Let's set it to the min of 1. Okay, that was actually worse. Let's try -1. Alright, and having 0 as a number will always throw me off. In fact, I don't even think I want all this stuff inside of the group. We want this outside. Alright, and to test how effective we are at what we were attempting to do here, let us increase the subdivisions. And besides the timeline refreshing, making it look bad, we have the intended result. As basic as it is. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Alright, and we're looking good. In fact, we probably want to capture the UV coordinates and use those for shading at the end, because everything's flat here, so we want it to remain textured in this way before it even gets over here to the end. So now that we are getting somewhere, let us start setting up everything again. So what's this, the original geometry? I don't even think I would need that. And that's it, everything's there. So now we can just animate this flipping up. But that's just one level. We want to, of course, take it a little bit further. In fact, I've done this like 100 times now, just trying to figure it out and rehearsing it, and I do a little bit better every time, but also make a new mistake every time. What do we have here? Is there anything we want to take over to the other side? No. But I do want to have this sitting above, so it's just not going inside. And let's think about what we are doing with our scale elements. So we are scaling it down. I don't like that. Let's deviate. Let's extrude. So now this is where it really begins. This is where we're gonna get in here and start figuring things out. Let's also deal with the shading. Nope, we can't deal with the shading inside the modifier. Shade smooth. We'll place it here, and we'll just turn that off for a moment, because otherwise it's getting in the way. So instead of extruding, we want to not extrude. Instead, we want to scale it out, and then we want to scale elements, and we'll plug our top face in, so that way whenever we press Alt-V and we look at the wireframe, we can scale in our face. However, I think that there is a duplicate face here, and to show that, we will I wish there was a way I could, let's see, I'll try to control C. Let's control A. Visual geometry to mesh. Nope. Okay, that didn't work. I thought it would work. Turned out that that was dumb. Alright. Let's try. Let's try that. Alright, so what I want to do is duplicate it and then make the geo real, just so I can see if there's duplicate faces here, and I wasn't able to confirm at that time, so we are just going to continue. Sorry about that. I'm just really worried about duplicate faces. I'm not sure if I'm creating them or how I can detect them or anything like that. You know, Blender and its awareness is a eternal battle. So we are just going to duplicate this over, and we're going to plug our top face in again. And this time, when we offset it, we will know, hey, there's nothing there. So now we have this scale able to choose how far we push it inwards, and then we have this part extruding down. And we could get as wild with this as we need to. In fact, I like to turn these into boundaries and then have them go up this, so that way it's kind of a ribbed entry, but that's for another time. So we have our element scale down here. What I want to do is separate geometry. We'll just duplicate this stuff, and we're going to plug in the index, and once we scale our elements, we simply want just a face on the inside. In fact, we basically want the top face, despite what I was about to do. So that's it. Let's try that again. Nope. Alright, so let's see, we want this face right here, that face. But we can't just get that face anymore, because we have went through some operations, haven't we? I wonder if we could use a capture. And we just capture it there. And then we say delete. If this works, I would be surprised. Every time I use this thing, it confounds me. And we want the separate version. And even inline, that's what I mean. Every time I use capture attributes, I still feel like I'm misusing it. In fact, I can already feel this tutorial beginning to get a little off the rails, so let me get back to focus. And I'm almost thinking it would be easier if we just did a separate geometry here, and then we grab the top, because there's always a way to do it without having to go through all the complex rigmarole I was doing at the beginning. So now we have this, and what I want to do is extrude it. I know, very, very confusing, but it shouldn't be. These are the most basic nodes ever that I'm messing with this morning. In fact, I'm watching the clock scroll up from 5 o'clock. I thought I'd be in here for just a quick moment. Let's do a merge by distance, but before that, we want to join this together. Let's just bring this out a little bit, and we'll use a join. And now that they're together, we can do a merge. And you can see the amount of vertices disappear from 12 to something like 8, which is more logical, especially if the shapes are together. And we can also take this and scale it just a little bit, just the littlest amount I mean, normally I would set the origin point to be somewhere, but we don't even need that. And let's see where we left off. So this is our, what I would call our chute. So we'll join this, and we'll join this, and now we have this. And this thing will be what we have sent throughout our chain now. So the first thing is we will need to find an edge for it, but that'll be easy because once we are here, we have what we need. But if we scale it down, then it shrinks. So we have to think about this. But I'm in the middle of recording, so I gotta really think. Gotta think hard, you gotta really think. Alright, think, take a drink, just playing. Let's place this here. Let's get rid of the scale. And I just want a particular edge, but not in the negative index range. And if I wanted to, I could also make that where no matter how we scroll, it always takes us onto an index by plugging it up to another system and creating a secondary machine for that. But it's not necessary. Let's just plug up our attribute statistic here since it's for that. And we're just analyzing what we have going on here. So now we have our edge, which means we can set our position, but we can only set our position if we grab what comes out of the joint and plug it into the set position. And then what we get from there we'll remove from there, plug here, then connect to the end. Let's take a look at this. Alright, and everything is opening the wrong direction. And that's probably because at some point we just went the wrong way. Or a normal probably got flipped. Let's Alt V and look at the face orientation. And we see that half of this has its face flipped. So this is something that happens, but it doesn't have to be our final fate. One day I think they'll have the ability for us to detect normals and then have them flipped to all face the right way. And we could probably stand to do a little bit of cleanup on our tree here. But my thought is always a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, and then I'm done. I know, a terrible way to think when it comes to nodes, because there's always more work that's able to be done, and thus, it could go on as long as you want it to. Let's turn off face orientation and just take a look at what we have. And I am pleased with that. And we are taking our scale elements, which is this, and we're feeding it into here. Let's take a look at it again. And now it should be rotating and positioned correctly according to its origin. We're getting a little wayward there. And the reason that I did this with subdivision instead of placing, I wanted to originally have a grid specifically placed to fit because its indexes are a lot more static than the rounded subdivision kind of terminating spiral thing it does, but I think I'm into it now. We see that it gets slower at higher numbers too. Let's see, we plugged this in, we did not need it. So let us go and remove max. Did we ever need max? Actually we did. There was a time when we had to set this to be -1. Look, we plugged this to max and we set this back to 0. Nope, don't want to mess with it. Let's see if they all open, just to make sure. Okay, good. Alright, then we'll get rid of that node, and I won't press my luck there. Maybe off camera. Alright, so J, we'll just call this time machine. You know, nothing serious there. And, you know, I feel like labeling all this is, less important, but maybe that's what I'm missing in my organization, in life. Alright. Let's see, Control J, F2, rotate. Get edge, like get and set. I'm one of those type of people. You know, are you a getter and a setter? I need to, or else I won't know. So let us press Control J, and we will just that's all it does. It just extrudes it onto a chute. And the index barely had a need for us in this operation of going through this. I mean, I don't even know what I'd label that. That's like pre-mesh spliterinos. Just playing. I can't rename myself with the eno at the end. You know, got my mesh spliterinos down here. Got my time machine machinerinos. Just playing. Just playing with words. All right. So we now are at this as our result. We could take it a step further, meaning that outside of this, we can hit it with a not merged. And I'm looking at the vertex count, and we slapped it down to 1.1. So now at least they are all joined together, except, you know, here they're not connected. So with that, we are looking at our result. In fact, you might be wondering, what about non-square items? Well, that will have to come into the next video where I start talking about face size and edge lengths and scaling things to fit other things, but it's something I'm still working on, expressing in a concise manner as I'm furthering my own understanding of it as well. But for this part, we'll take a brief intermission before jumping into the next section. So previously we had set up our little flip doors to have something sequential, as you're seeing here. Well, sort of sequential, besides the index being changed as it has been, but everything is somewhat sequential. However, what if we want it to be more random? Well, that's where I'm going to split the index, and we're just going to plug it into a noise in the vector. If we don't plug it into the vector, we'll get a result that looks like this. Things will look kind of busted up, but if we plug the index, then it will basically affect each index only, which gives us a much more desirable result. We'll change the scale down to 0.3, and let's change this to 4D so that we can take the multiply value of our time machine and plug it up, and that will just animate it happening over time so we don't have to be pulling sliders. And from here, anytime we need to deal with the intensity of a black and white, that's where the color ramp comes in. So we're just bringing them together to make it a little bit more visual. And now we can see that the doors are opening and closing more randomly instead of how we had it before. In fact, if we wanted to, we could create a machine to cycle through both of these states, even though it's not entirely necessary. But let's go ahead and try it. Let's do mix result. And what we want is the result of this. And the result of this, able to be mixed. So now we should basically have a map range, or actually we want to plug this here by mistake. So now we can cycle between that, and we can cycle between that. In fact, we can kind of blend them. I wonder what it would take to get them to be kind of random. Something like that. So now they are random, but also slightly offset. So just being weird here. I just love playing with the mixed value. I saw Jonathan Lapel use it in a tutorial about text recently in geometry nodes, and it was just rather mind-blowing. It solved a lot of mysteries for me, which is what got me back to work making videos. But here we see that I can use it to so smoothly drift between being random and being completely sequential. In fact, let's take it back to being kind of random. And they just drift together so nicely. So just another thing I wanted to go over. We'll just call this noise. Got caps lock on. Noise switch. And let's see, in 20 minutes it's time for me to go kill myself by trying to run some miles. I'm trying to curb the tiredness that comes with being old, because it's quite scary to lose your energy so dramatically over the course of the day, you know. I don't think anyone's ever going to be prepared for becoming old. I sure wasn't. So now that we are pulling this out, we now have this as our result, and that's not bad at all. However, we want to take it maybe even a little bit further than that. You know, maybe we can get a little weird with it. In the long-lost tradition of many great node experts, we must end this with a renderable result. So, first thing I'll do is Alt-M, and we'll hit it with a blank material. And we're able to hit it with a blank material, which is strange considering that it's a geometry node construct, right? Typically we have to set material with these things. And what we'll do is at the end of the stack we'll put a set material node, so just set material, and we'll just make sure to assign that material. We're just using just material, not even our material 001 that we just made. It doesn't really matter what material we use. We're just setting up materials at this point. We can perfect it, of course, after we get the large stroke set down. So here we go. And for this other material that we have, if we take a look at it, we see that, you know, it's just a default gray, but we have a randomized color for the viewport. So we do want to deal with that. So somewhere in here, right here, we are looking at our single flipper, and so that is our opportunity to strike. So I will set material. I like that the option is there, and what I like to do is have it slide in and then Control Z to just undo that, because I don't want it to slide in like that. And we'll just give that its own material and take a look at what we have. Let's mute this one just to see what we have done. And so it looks like at the end we kind of override things at this point. So let's examine that. Let's Alt rip it out, and let's actually place it here, which is where we take the main part and we connect it in, and then our little flipper that we're dealing with independently gets sent through here. The outer border gets its shading, and then it's combined. So it looks like we are where we're supposed to be. But we want to take it a little further than that. In fact, to be honest, if I had it my way, I would put a bevel on this, but this isn't going to bevel because we are ripping it after subdividing it, so we'd only have a bevel around the sides and it would expose that there's a gap here, and we just don't want to deal with that yet. I mean, maybe for another day. But let's go to the beginning, and I want to assign them, I want to put an image on these. So let's capture all of these laying down. Maybe there's a moment in time in which they are all down, and they are not. In fact, what we'll do is just take a brief moment to just mute that, and by muting it, everything is sitting still. So if we were to look at this from top view, let's bring in an image that we'll be using to project onto this. For this moment, what we'll do is right click our tab and we'll duplicate it to just make a new tab. And in this tab, we'll just make this one into a UV image editor. And I'm just going to drag in an image related to the install pad because I never tire of seeing that. So from here, let's split the window and we will go into the shader editor. And we're looking at material 2. I'm going to press home to just locate it, and we're just going to drag this down to make this a movie. And hopefully this is populating everything. Let's just plug it in the base color. And if we are lucky, everything should just be already UV'd and we don't have to deal with anything. But I'm hoping that it's not so easy, so that way we can have a little fun with it. And it looks like we are somewhat lucky because the image is there. In fact, if we let it play, it should have been playing. Let's double check and see why that. Okay, so we want to check cyclic and auto refresh. Cyclic will make it repeat over and over, and auto refresh will make it update no matter what frame we're on. And we're just doing the same 100 frames. Let's try 500. I don't even know if it's that long, but we do want to see everything show up. We could also mess with the offset to really get this thing cooking immediately. And so at this point, we are at a moment in time where we can't even see what's going on. In fact, can we make this update too? I feel like videos should be able to update inside of the image editor at this point whenever you're using Blender, but okay, there we go. Let's restart it, and we're just taking a look at what we have here. I actually have never scrubbed through the UV image editor before. And we need to really offset this by 200 frames. Let's look at this. We need to offset this by 400 frames. I'm just having fun here. Boom. Let's offset this by 350 frames. Boom. So we need to set this to also be the same way. I wonder if I could delete it and then drag it over. Okay, now that would have been crazy. If these settings would have already been populated here, yeah, that would have made my day. But Blender will get it. Blender will get it. Blender is getting serious. Getting serious and staying ruddy mysterious. Alright. What'd be crazy would be to be able to deal with the mapping of these. So let's do texture coordinates, UV. We'll go back to the beginning, and I'm just going to use math, vector math, and try some stuff without knowing exactly what I'm doing. Alright, and if we multiply, we should be able to do compression. And let's take this and turn it to add, and if we do some addition, we could do a little offsetting. Like, I have this rule where if I can't see that final frame, not a good day. Like, if I can't see the final frame, which the final frame is always the logo, but it's important to be able to see the final frame because it's the prestige, you know? So it's like your calling card. You got to be able to say who did it, who was here. And in this case, it was a little insolve. I could have used a little geometry nodes had I known what to do with them to make this work, but you know, we're just kind of hacking our way through this. So now we look at this and we just have our ad playing, and then boom. In fact, let's jump over to the boom. The boom feels good. Gotta boom when you can, but not too much. Alright, it's my video. And let's see. It's kind of hard to actually move it because I guess the movements are so millimeter. Like needing percentages of a micron of a unit. In fact, let's try 1. Let's try 5.9. Let's try 5.7. Alright. And also, I don't feel like this thing was being cyclic. It just sat there. And how long should it sit there? You know, I'm going to say that this is 150 frames, and then it starts over. Alright? We can't just sit there on the last frame, even though it is the Install logo. But this video is not even brought to you by Install. We're just having a little fun. I just wanted something near and dear to slap on this. But let us unmute and just see what we have now. Whenever my woman saw me making this, she said, "Why are you making a clue board?" I was like, no, it's not that. It's something cooler. But, you know, step 1 is starting off with something like this. You know, really get the fundamentals in there. Alright, so we had a part where we flipped the faces. You know, those faces, let's delete it, but we do want to set the material of those faces. So let's Control Z, and we're just going to place this here and give it this inside material. Alright, and they both get joined right here. So that means the one that we flipped is correct, but this one we're going to need to put here. And then when we delete our viewer, we actually see what's going on here. So now we don't want the inside faces getting shaded like that because, you know, it's just an outside face thing. And if we just take a look at this, let's Alt V, press E, and we appear to be having a slight issue because I'm using Blender 4.0 or 4.4. I should actually be using 4.3, which is the last supported version as of this moment. But what I meant to do was go at the top and just turn on shadows and maybe cavity just to kind of see things a little better. And then for this view, we probably want some sort of viewport shadows, but we're not even looking at the actual render result. So I'm going to take this cube and let's just press GZ1 just to place it on the floor because it is literally just a cube. Let's Shift A, add a plane. We'll S5, and we'll give this a blank material too. And so we see that we're not having an issue whenever it comes to assigning blank materials, just with other things. So that's something I'll definitely be having to check into once this video is complete. Let's Alt V, B, and we'll just roll in a few lights, just via hard ops blank lights. Just have a little fun here. And let's take it into render. For render, we are just going to just darken the background and really see what we have going on here. So we probably want to make this an emission material, but I guarantee you if I go here and I change it to emission, everything disappears. It's like a really weird thing, right? So instead I'm going to just Alt rip that out, Shift A, we'll add a shader, emission. And we'll just let that play. And over here, we actually don't need this to auto refresh anymore. It's good. In fact, as I roll the wheel, you can see it kind of moving along in the timeline. But yeah, we don't need that anymore. The other thing is bloom. Bloom is something that we're going to have to deal with because previously you would be able to press Alt V, and when you jumped up to HQ, it would enable bloom. But bloom is now handled by the compositor. And what I mean by that is that we have to go to the compositor. And the compositor, I mean, I always thought the compositor was a little slow, but it appears that the compositor heard me and they're not that way anymore. So we're going to change this to, let's see, fog glow. Let's go with 0.2, 0.2, and let's also enable the compositor to show. And we can see the results of our mixing, and we can see the result of our threshold. And all we're doing is just giving it a little bit of bloom, just bringing the bloom back. And the fact that we have bloom so performant in the viewport, despite being powered by the compositor, is just a dream come true. I remember a long time ago testing out the TPU compositor, and it was a bit crashy, and now we see that at the end of it, the compositor is the ability to add effects in the viewport. So really interesting. So we can wrap this video here for now, so that way I can jump on to the next part, which is making rockets shoot out of each of the little portals. So with that, I will wrap up this video, and thank you all for watching. I apologize for such an abrupt end, and with that, I will pick up in the next video.